Hello. Welcome to the Fuck It All podcast. Today, this is a special edition. Generally, this is a show about individual stories that lead women to a fuck it all moment. In doing this work, talking to hundreds of women, we've come to learn that most of these moments are a rewrite of a story or system that, you guessed it, didn't work for them. And that is why we are so thrilled to sit down with two extraordinary women who are doing both, rewriting the story and rewriting the system. This is a special conversation because it's not just a conversation for today, but a partnership. It All Media and Semaine Health are coming together to rewrite the narrative around women's health. We already have learned so much from Catherine and Lauren, Kath and Lar, as we now get to call them. They are both equal parts inspiration and education, and we can't wait to share how their fuck it all moments propelled them to start a company that is changing the face of women's health, infiltrating a system that didn't serve them and doesn't serve so many of us. So, as a home for the news stories that define us and conversations women want to have, let's go. I'm Kacie Gordon, and I am joined by my best friend and co-founder,
Katie Louise Mullins.
And
Lar and Kat.
Yes! Over the next several IAM and Semaine conversations, we are going to be here to educate, help you get in your power, dispel the myths, and get real about our own health experiences, share aha moments, and of course, in true fuck it all fashion, have fun along the way. So, let's do it, ladies.
Ooh, we can't wait.
So excited.
Okay, so this conversation specifically, this is going to be a series of conversations, but we wanted to talk about, our podcast started to tell individual stories and frankly was born out of our own fuck it all moments. But then we realized through our research, Katie being the incredible social impact mind said wait, stories inform beliefs, beliefs inform actions, and actions inform systems. And as it relates to women's health, a place that so many of us don't feel in our power. We don't feel comfortable. And especially what's going on in US politics, we don't even feel at home in our own bodies. Mm-hmm. And so when we started talking to the two of you about your personal experiences that brought you to create Semaine, and we'll get into all the wonderful things that Semaine stands for and what you all are bringing to the world, that's where we said this feels bigger, right? Yes, we're selling products at the end of the day. We want to be adding value to women's everyday lives, but there's a bigger conversation here and why you started the company. So I would love just to get in your own words, what is Semaine? Why did you start it? Tell me a little bit about that fuck it all moment. And, Katie and I are here as eager listeners, learning, feeling inspired along the way.
Katie and Kacie, we're so excited to be here. And yeah, we can talk forever about Semaine. It is obviously our passion, and it started from very, very personal experiences, which I think so many, especially small businesses, do.
I think we were forced into our fuck it all moment.
Absolutely. And we tried to avoid it for as long as possible. we were like, let's just push it aside. Let's ignore it. But essentially, it started when we were teenagers. And we've always had super painful periods. And when we first went to the doctor, our gynecologist, I think we were 16. They were like, oh yeah, okay, just go on birth control and take some NSAIDs every month. And we were like, okay, yeah, the doctor said to do that. Let's do that.
This is part of being a woman.
This is part of being a woman. Our mom always had painful periods. We're like, okay, normal. You just have to suck it up and you have to try to put a Band-Aid on it. So that's what we did. And that's how we learned to basically treat our periods. It was something that we always hated because it was painful. It seemed messy. It got in the way of our lives. And so using birth control and NSAIDs seemed to be the only option.
And that's what everybody we knew used, right?
Exactly.
I mean, every doctor just said, go on birth control, take pain meds.
Yeah. And so that's what we did even throughout our 20s, throughout college. And then as we were getting older, for me, the pain shifted in my late 20s. And I remember I was like, okay, now it's not just debilitating where I actually have to stop work and lay on the ground in a fetal position, which shouldn't have been normal. But that's what I thought was a normal period. I started getting these sharp jabbing sensations in my pelvis. It hurt to sit. It hurt to stand. I was incredibly bloated. And I was like, you know what? This isn't normal. So I went onto Dr. Google and I was looking through all my symptoms, and I literally matched every single one for endometriosis. And so I went to my gynecologist and I was like, I don't know what this endometriosis is, but I match every single symptom. So I think I have it. And she was like, yeah, you probably do. Oh, so sorry. And that was the end of the conversation. So I was just like, okay, I guess I just deal with this pain and that's life.
Every 4 weeks of the rest of your life. Of
Exactly,
course.
exactly. I think Kath always famously said when she first started her period when you were 12, she asked my mom for a hysterectomy right away.
Yeah,
So
I already knew I didn't want it. Like, that's how, like, I was like, "Nope, not in my body. I don't want this." And she was like, "You might want a baby someday." And I was like, "But would I? Is
it
it worth it?"
seems not worth it. And obviously we didn't know all like for more than a decade that we had this condition at the
And I
time.
think the underlying theme here too, which like pulls it back to what Semaine means to us, is that we were just constantly, if not dismissed, which did happen, but
Mhm.
kind of like brushed off as like, this is part of being a woman, right? This pain
Yeah.
that you're experiencing, this is life as a woman. And so we didn't even think to push it with medical practitioners.
No, because what else could you do? That was just your body, and your doctors are saying, here are your options. There's two of them, and that's all you get.
And it sucks that you have endometriosis, but go on with your life.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we did. And until we reached that fuck it all moment, which was really like a come to Jesus moment for me, because I had something called an endometrioma, which is essentially, you can think of it kind of like a tumor. It's benign, but it's basically something that can happen when you have stage 3 or stage 4 endometriosis. They stage it like cancer. Endo is not terminal, but it is something that can be horrifically painful and obviously affect quality of life. And like for me, result in multiple hospital stays. So I had this endometrioma that ruptured. And I ended up in the hospital over a couple of days where they were trying to figure out what happened. And they were like, oh, it's appendicitis. And I was like, well, I have endometriosis. They think it might have been a cyst rupture. They're like, no, 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 appendicitis. So I was in the hospital for about 4 days. This is when I was living abroad in the UK. And they were like, we're just going to wait and see what happens. I was in extreme amounts of pain.
Which is like not what you do, even if they thought you had appendicitis, which still
Ye-
blows my mind.
Exactly. They were just like, let's wait and see. Oh no, she has a massive fever. The fever won't go down. Well, we can't perform surgery because you're so feverish. So there was 4 days of this. And on the fourth morning, that was my moment, because I woke up and I just had searing pain all across my pelvis. It felt like it was on fire. It bloated. So I looked about 6 months pregnant and I started shaking uncontrollably. And I remember thinking, I'm in so much pain right now. It's okay if I die because I can't handle this. I always thought in movies and stuff, you pass
You
out.
pass out
In the movies and TV shows, people pass out, but no, you can actually withstand quite a bit of pain and still be
for
conscious.
long periods of time.
And I
Yes.
remember just being like, okay, I'm done. This is enough. I'm okay. And the doctors were finally like, okay, we need to do an ultrasound. Something's not right. Ding, ding, ding. And they found out that because of that ruptured endometrioma, it had basically irritated everything inside my pelvic cavity, had pulled a bunch of liquid into my pelvic cavity. I guess your body's trying to protect the organs. So I had about 500 milliliters of fluid in my pelvis, which is why I looked 6 months pregnant. And they were like, okay, yeah, we got to do emergency surgery, rush me into surgery. And that was when they technically officially diagnosed me with endometriosis. They were like, yep, that is what you have. And that's just really rough. You'll probably have to have more surgeries. You'll be in a lot of pain. Keep taking the painkillers, and that's life. And I was, at that point on it, I had never thought of myself as somebody with a condition or a disease, even though I had self-diagnosed myself through Dr. Google back in my late 20s. This was happening when I was 30, 31 in the hospital. And I was just like, no, 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 no. Like I don't want to do no, no. I decline. I decline your invitation to this condition. And I remember being in the hospital. I was in for about 2 weeks total because there were complications from the surgery. And I remember thinking, I was starting to get flowers. My work was sending me flowers. And I was like, fuck, I'm the person in the hospital getting flowers. I'm in the hospital
Mm.
long enough that I'm that sick person. It was just a really horrific experience. And so that for me was definitely the moment. And I'm sure for Kath, tangentially, she was in the States, but having to hear that your sister is
No, that was horrific. And it was like, I think, and that's what got me serious about like doing something about my endometriosis proactively and not waiting for an endometrioma to rupture.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. And we still didn't know anything. I mean, just to speed up the story, because we can talk about it forever. Eventually, Kath and I, we learned more about endo. We luckily found an endometriosis specialist here in Atlanta, which was amazing.
mhm.
And we've had, since that emergency surgery for me, I've had another surgery, which really made the pain so much more bearable. But now, 10 years from that, practically, we still have a lot of pain on our periods. And so I remember it was about 2016, 2017. I just could not take the NSAIDs I was taking. More Tylenol didn't touch it. I had to take something in order to function. You know, if I didn't take pain meds, couldn't go to work, couldn't sit or stand comfortably. So I was like, I've got to just push through it. But my stomach lining was like, nope, you can't do that anymore. Like I would take, if it was like Advil or just any sort of NSAID, even if I ate a massive meal, because I was like, okay, protect the stomach, I would be in more pain from taking the NSAIDs than I was almost from my endo, or I would just have two different types of pain in my body. So I was like, okay, this is not working.
Yeah.
Luckily, I am married to a wonderful scientist, and he's been with me on this entire journey. And he was like, we're going to find something to make you feel better. And I was like, okay, I don't think that exists, but okay. But that was really how Semaine was born. I mean, because I remember thinking when Matt was pulling together different ingredients that could help lower my inflammation, and I was just like, okay, that sounds great. I hope it works. When it did work for me, I was like, okay, we know so many other people with either painful periods or with endo now, because we're in the endo community, that we have to be able to share this with other people. And I remember there was a point where Kath and I both were thinking, like, if we do that, that means we have to confront a lot more about our health and be willing to talk about
The
trauma and our endometriosis stories, which now it's like super easy. I love talking about it. I want to talk about it all the time just to make other people comfortable about talking about their experiences. But then every time I talked about it, there was a lot of trauma. There was a lot of like triggering moments for me. And, you know, in the hospital when I was there in Scotland, I did think I was going to die. I went into septicemia. And so my body was not working. Antibiotics were not working. And I remember just being like, I just want to get as far away from that moment as possible. So when we were thinking about starting Semaine, that's what went through my head. And I was like, nope, nope, like we have to do this
And the
thing.
crazy thing is there's so many people that have gone through equally traumatic or more so,
Yeah.
whether or not it's fibroids or endometriosis or adenomyosis. There's so many conditions out there. So ultimately, of course, like on paper, Semaine Health is a women's health company. We create supplements for these kind of stigmatized issues that are very common
Yeah, like
for
periods.
like periods and hormone
Yeah.
irregulations. But also to me, it really means like reaching out to those women, which is the majority of women who have felt dismissed either by society or by the medical community and feel like they're not being heard. It's so important for us. Like customer service is such a big deal for us because we want our customers to feel like they're being heard and their
Mhm.
pain is being understood or at least sympathized with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. Thank you so much for sharing that, and even the parts of it that I know are probably still traumatic to go back to, because I think, we talk about the power of story. It's the ability to see ourselves in another
Yes.
reality. And, the main character and author of our stories, like up until that moment, endo was happening to you and it was being dismissed. It was invisible. You were invisible.
Mhm.
And in that moment, it was really a rewrite. And I know that Katie, when we all sat down at the Lola here in Atlanta, it's a women's club that we're all members of, and that was the connection point where you said, like, we need to do something with these women. And I'd love for you to share a bit of your story, because I could see the head nods as Lara's telling it, like, yep, me too, me too. So I'd love to explore that, because these are varying degrees of the same conditions, but we're all experiencing something that's universal in some way as women.
Yeah, and like you guys said, these are very normal, common common conditions for women. I think actually the night before I met the two of you, I was looking up online supplements for hormonal imbalances. And I remember trying to read reviews and I was very stressed. We were coming out of the holiday season and I was suffering from a bunch of hair loss at the time and felt very out of whack and more anxiety ridden from the fact that my body was physically manifesting these things rather
Yeah.
than actually experiencing anxiety. I feel like health put me into a fear spiral. And we walked into the Lola the morning that we met the two of you, and you both gave Kacie and I sample supplements. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is, thank you, universe. I asked for this and it was manifested. The
So
two of
cool.
you. So we got their daily supplements and also their period supplements for PMS. And it was just like a gift. And immediately when you all started talking and or sharing your story, my story is not dissimilar. Fortunately, I've never been in the hospital, but my pain, I went on birth control at 15 for the very same reasons. I put nail marks in our linoleum floor in our kitchen when I was a kid because I had so much pain. And the only reason that we jumped to the conclusion of endometriosis, because it is so difficult to diagnose, really, even though we know all the symptoms, but because it's like an inward diagnosis. My mother has endometriosis and had a lot of trouble getting pregnant with my brother and had to have several surgeries to have that lasered. So kind of knew genetically that I was predispositioned. But yeah, it was pain medication and birth control for years. And they tried two different kind of birth controls. And in college, it was never the right fit for me. I needed a very high amount of estrogen to balance me out, or progesterone. And so I was on my period for 2 weeks and then off for 2 weeks, on for 2 weeks, off for 2 weeks for 4 years. And I went into my OBGYN and I asked, and this is a woman doc, I spoke to her about the situation. Is there anything else we can try? And she said, this is as good as it gets for you. And I accepted that as truth until I eventually moved and had to find a new doctor. And they were like, what are we doing here? We need to try at least different birth controls, if nothing else. But because I've been on that since 15, I've lived abroad for several years in both Asia and Europe, and having to switch medications based on availability, trying to get prescriptions in the US like to take with me in advance. It's been nothing less than a nightmare. And if I'm off of it for even a short period of time, it throws my body into an insane loop. And when I got home from Thailand, having to switch back to a new medication, they had actually retired one of the older ones that I was on. And I went into a hormonal depression for 3 months and bled for almost 6 weeks straight.
Mm.
And I was laying on the bathroom floor crying. And I called my brother, who's an ER doctor, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And he was like, drive to me. We'll get you blood work. We'll figure this out. But like, I just felt like I had nowhere else to turn. And at the time I was coming back and I didn't have health insurance that would cover the situation. And so it's been a horrible experience and journey really from the very beginning. So meeting the two of you was like, I think just the immediate bond over like, I know exactly what you're saying. And
Yes.
I've been through this too. And it felt like I was immediately part of that community. And I took the sample supplements and my hair stopped falling out and I like evened out and my life came back. And so it was the most wonderful thing. And now I'm a Semaine believer for life. So this seemed like such an organic and wonderful partnership for us to join in, knowing that we have such similar narratives.
Oh my gosh, Katie, thank you so much for saying that. And that, I mean, that just is exactly why we wanted to start Semaine, because I feel like so many of our users, we've heard similar stories. And it's like, I've tried a bunch of things, or I've been through some sort of traumatic experience, whether that is being dismissed or something extreme like in the hospital, but hearing that we have other options, like that's the thing we want to provide. I feel being told this is as good as it gets on our end, being told this is normal, you just have to deal with it, is insane. Like the
Mhm.
definition of insane.
Yeah.
I still
Well, and
can't believe.
it's not just like the three of us obviously have had extreme cases, and there's a lot of people out there who've been in the same boat as us, but there's also women who just have painful enough periods where they're taking off work or school,
Mhm.
right? Maybe they don't have endometriosis or any other underlying conditions, just a really painful period. And like we have normalized through commercials like tampon sporty commercials and stuff like that to just like push through the pain.
Yeah.
And it's like suck it up, but like sometimes it's so bad you have to take off work and stuff. And I don't think the states are anywhere as close to Spain, who just allowed for menstrual leave. And I know there's a handful of other countries like Indonesia who do it too, but that's something that should be universal.
There's something as you all are talking that I've not experienced this firsthand of endometriosis. Obviously, the discomfort or pain or just general, annoyance, to use lack of a better word, that can come with your monthly cycle, that I just think it needs to be one, acknowledging the nuance of women's health and the fact that we are all born and as women or menstruators, and we'll get into what that more broader encompassing category, but it's not something, so you think about normal health care that you may go get treated for. This is something that there's not preventative care for. It's like, "Oh, I'm gonna take care of myself so I never get a period." Like, that is
Right.
something that's normal. It is, I don't know, necessary to move forward the human race. So it is something that collectively occurs to us, for us. Usually we start to track it and understand it as it relates to reproduction. So, do you want to have a kid or do you not? And understanding your cycle as it relates to that. It's tied to our sexuality. So, rarely are we going to medical institutions for something that happens naturally as a part of us, but also is so tied to a part of our lives that can be tied to identity, pleasure. So it's sexuality, it's healthcare, it's this essence of being a woman. It can be painful. I think one, acknowledging that it's just complex and nuanced.
Mm.
Absolutely.
That is something that's so often in our systems, especially in healthcare, the nuance is not accounted for. And I recognize when you're servicing massive groups of people and you have to create regulation, but the fact that we just try to put it in these very specific buckets, and I think so much of healthcare, especially women's health, is just like you said, it's the empathy, it's the sympathy, it's the validating that you are experiencing something. In no world across any other condition or any other group of people would we say you're swollen to the point that you look like you are with child,
Mhm.
or putting nail marks in a floor and be like, girl, that's just a normal Tuesday on your period. Like, it is so, you say it on paper and it's like, that's fucking crazy. But then you put all of these women together or individuals together that experience periods and they're like, oh yeah, that's normal. And it's just, part of me gets infuriated of
Yes.
how did we get here, especially like you said, Katie, you were seeing a woman practitioner. So
Yes.
I think looking at this systemically to say, historically, up until probably when a lot of these discoveries were being made, many of the healthcare providers were men. A lot of our plumbing, for lack of better words, is internal. There's stuff that has to be either it's surgery or procedures that you have to go inside. And then the fact, Katie, you're talking about just this access to generalized healthcare. This is not a
Mm.
preventative condition where it's like, oh, heart medicine, you really need to eat healthy, or don't smoke so you don't get lung cancer. It's like, no, this is just literally called being a woman. And then the thing I loved, one of our first conversations, you painted a visual. You're like, okay, you need to go get some sort of product related to women's health. You go into the aisle. Like you said, Kath, there's like the tampon sport. Like, I don't even do sports. I don't know why I need a fucking tampon sport.
Right.
Like, I'm not active that way.
I'm not wearing a tennis skirt. It's
No,
just not going to happen.
I'm not running unless somebody's chasing me, is what I say. And then the second is like family planning. I love that. Like, that is
Mm.
a whole thing. It's like, girl, no, I just want to have some sex with a
Mhm.
Yep.
condom. Like, I don't need family planning for my lube. And then the third is like, get you some Vagisil. Mind you, I'm going to whisper it
Oh,
Yep.
because that sounds so freaking empowering.
Yep.
Vagisil.
Yep.
in the feminine hygiene aisle,
Yeah.
right?
Could you imagine something called penisil?
Oh,
Penicil,
no.
no. Uh-uh.
You have to kind of laugh. I mean, like, there has to be a level of
Yes.
like, this is crazy.
Yes. It's totally crazy. And I think to your point, Casey, like simplifying it extremely, but I do think collectively, because culturally, societally, we've grown up really millennia thinking that it is a woman's lot in life to experience pain, whether that's childbirth or even if you're not particularly religious or anything, that's inculcated into our Western society that
Yes.
women should experience pain and that is a normal part of our lives. And it's not to say, yeah, of course, childbirth is painful, but I think periods really shouldn't be painful. And that's something I didn't understand. It makes sense your body's cramping a little bit because it's literally shedding part of an organ, So that makes sense. But anything that is debilitating or makes it so you have to change your lifestyle 1 week out of every month is not normal, but we've 100% normalized that because just how we were all told, like, oh, yeah, you just have to suck it up. Our
Yeah.
culture just thinks, yeah, for women, that's normal. So let's not put the research behind it. Let's not try to find other solutions because that's just part of being a
Well,
woman.
and I think one of the things that was so telling is as we've pitched to investors, as we've told everybody, I mean, we talk about periods and hormones all the time to anybody. I don't care
Mhm.
who it is. Even if people are getting embarrassed, I'm like, we are having this conversation.
In fact, we need to
We
have
need
this
to, this is proof we
conversation.
need to have this conversation. But it's so funny, even people who are being open and understanding about it, they're like, this is such a great niche product. And that drives me crazy because I'm like, it's not niche when it's half the population. But I think people think it's niche because we don't talk about it. We don't share our stories, and society has normalized it. And it's part of being a woman. And even women with their partners, especially, I feel like our parents' generation, we don't talk about that. Right?
Yes.
Like, that's
Well,
just,
and I think we've even taken that on to the extent that I had friends that I worked with that consistently every month they would have to take a day or two off of work. And I'd be like, totally get it. I'm there. And then when I told them I was starting this supplement company and it was a supplement for PMS and period pain, they're like, oh, yeah, my periods aren't that painful. Because I think you're
right.
just taught to think so. Well, one, I think when you're not in it, you're like,
You
no,
forget about the
it's
pain.
totally fine.
Yes.
But I think it's also because we've been taught that one, you don't want to admit that I have to take off of work because of quote unquote female problems. And then I think also because we've been taught that you don't honor that experience at all. If that's what's happening, ignore it, move on. And honestly, like starting from the beginning of this episode, we wanted to do that. Kath and
Oh,
I
we
were totally
tried
like,
it for decades.
decades. Yeah, let's ignore it. Let's
Take the pain meds.
Oh, we have painful periods, but we deal with it. We did until I ended up in the hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, even just the culture around a pouch to hide your tampon while you're
Yeah.
going to the bathroom. It's like,
Mhm.
if I had to take a Tylenol, I wouldn't be like, let me secretly go take this in the
Right.
hall because, like, God forbid somebody know. And so I have a daughter now. She's only 2.5, but like, I've thought a lot about that of, you begin to assess your own experiences of how you were exposed to something, the narratives. And she'll say to me, like on my period, any mom knows you don't pee alone ever. And so she'll be in there, what is that? And being able to start talking about it as a matter of fact, like, oh, mommies get their periods once a month. So if mommy ever wants to have another baby, this is what that looks like. And this is something that helps mommy, and so being able to even talk about it in a
Yeah.
way like that is something that I've carried. And so just like you said, like that was me. I was in an office just like we all were right before the pandemic hit. And I remember like tucking it away in my
Of course.
pants. And now I
Yeah.
think like that is something that majority of people around us either are experiencing or have a partner, a mother, a sister, a friend, like they and so I just like it is so ingrained to be shameful, to be private. And so
Yeah.
then you add in pain with it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh God, you better keep that to yourself. So these are the unspoken stories that all of us know so well. Despite them not being spoken, we all
Yep.
know it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I visualize a day when we walk down that aisle in any store and it's like, yes, I cannot wait to pick out the things that are meant for me as if I were
Yes.
shopping for clothes and I was like attracted to things. And I made like a conscious effort when I have my Semaine supplements, I leave them on my kitchen counter right by my
Oh,
sink.
I love it.
And they have beautiful branding, by the way,
They
everyone.
do.
Thank you.
But I think that that's just part of it. I was like, this is an everyday thing. I'm proud of this. I'm taking care of myself. This is part of my healthcare and these are meant for me. And I think about that too, in that I'm gonna pick out things that I'm like, yes, I can't wait to try this guy. It's like the same as like a new face wash or something like that. Where you're
Exactly.
just like, and I'm gonna check out and not try to hide this underneath of my like bananas, you know?
Exactly. Oh my gosh. 100%. And Katie, that's just amazing because the branding was really important to us because we wanted, whether you're on your period, whether you're experiencing hormonal fluctuations, we wanted it to feel like self care. We wanted it to feel like something you're excited to do for your body, for your wellness. And exactly that experience walking down the aisle and being like, this is beautiful. And this is something that could be an option for me.
Yeah.
The fact that we go down the aisle now and we've talked about this with other menstrual entrepreneurs where it's a hold your breath aisle. You literally walk down it,
Mhm.
grab the thing you need, the sporty tampons, and you run out,
Yeah.
And it's like, what if it was like, yes, shopping for clothes or like the beauty aisle or skincare where you're like, ooh, let's look at
And
the
there's so many
ingredients.
options. There's so
Let's
many
look at
different
all the
options that
options.
it's like fun figuring out what's going to work best for you.
Exactly. I have oily skin. You have dry skin. Like we are all different human beings and we should
Yes.
all have these different options for us to make ourselves feel better. But obviously we can't do that if it's something we're trying to ignore or push down or, just
Feel shameful.
normalize that. Yeah, it's not something, periods are not good.
Okay. So because we're going to have so many of these conversations, I want to cut to what are the products that are on the market today? Like I want our listeners to be able to know what can they go look at not only on Semaine's website but also in retailers in that aisle that we are transforming to be a celebratory in our power aisle.
Ooh, we love it. So
Great
we
question.
are just dipping our toes into brick and mortar retail, which has been very exciting. So on our own website, we have our two first products, which is our PMS and period support supplement, which you just take as you need it. And then our daily hormone balance supplement, which is what you take daily to help really support your metabolic hormones. So we're approaching this in a little bit of a different way. It's not technically directly affecting estrogen or progesterone levels, but by supporting our metabolic hormones like insulin, you're really helping your body be way less stressed. And in turn, that really helps balance the rest of your hormones. Because we think about hormones as just our sex hormones. We have so many different hormones, cortisol and melatonin, and all. There's so many hormones that are affected by our endocrine system. And if one of those systems is out of whack, then the rest of them are out of whack. And that just naturally happens, lucky for us, in our modern lifestyles of super stressful situations,
Mhm.
going through a pandemic, but even just being stressed at work, trying to balance it all with kids, family, friends, going to work. And then our diets also aren't always the healthiest. Processed foods, those things are very stressful on our bodies in a physical way. And so really being able to support our health on a daily basis through hormone balancing is why we created the daily hormone balance to work in conjunction with our PMS and period support. Because we had a lot of people who were like, oh, great, my periods aren't painful anymore, but I have hair loss or I have hormonal acne or I have extreme mood swings. Like, what can I do
Or
about those things?
overgrowth of hair.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
All the fun things. So that's really why we have those two main products. We are launching some more products very, very soon, but we have started in Target stores. Now we're on target.com and we'll be expanding there. And we literally just launched into Walgreens stores, which is so exciting. So we are in the fem care aisle there at Walgreens with our PMS and period support. And the goal really is to be in as many doors physically as possible so that we are an accessible brand to everybody. Not everybody wants to buy supplements online. They want to like see and hold the packaging and read it for
Mhm.
themselves and really experience it. And like we were talking about, Katie, with having that experience in the aisle where you're seeing options for yourself.
Yeah.
So that really is our goal, to expand as much as we can in
And to be
person.
there where people are shopping. Because right
Yeah.
now, I mean, I think most of us have tried Midol and Pamprin in our lives. And if they work for you, that is fantastic. They never helped me that much. And it's also insane. Once again, going back to the like, it's not a niche conversation. It's like, how do we only have those two options
Yeah.
still to this day in 2022? So it's like, we always say Semaine should be an option for you. It doesn't mean everyone needs to take it, but it's a plant-based option. It's all natural, which have never been on shelf before.
Yeah, there's never been that option for us. I mean, even if you go to Whole Foods, you'll see women's supplements, and those are usually more in traditionally based Chinese medicine. So, Dong
Mhm.
Quai or maybe chasteberry, Vitex, those are great ingredients that have been used for millennia.
And they help a lot of women.
And they help a lot of people, but it's tricky because they do alter hormonal balances and levels. And like Katie, you were saying, it's like you had to find birth control that was the right, more estrogen or less progesterone. And
Mhm.
for a lot of us, we don't have the same imbalances. So we were always like, how can we address period pain and really get to the root cause and not directly affect people's hormone levels in a negative way? So our PMS and period support is essentially a plant-based anti-inflammatory, which really anybody can take, but also more importantly, you can take it if you're on hormonal birth control. You can take it if you're trying to get pregnant because it isn't affecting your sex hormones directly like a lot of the supplements out there. And it really is acting as sort of like a fast relief rather than something you have to take all month long for your period pain.
Obsessed. And so, for anybody listening, please go check out our show notes. We are going to have more on the products that are available from Semaine, SemaineHealth.com. You can go check them out directly. And to hear more, I know Laura, seeded it a little bit. We have some product announcements coming up down the line. Please go join our mailing list, itallmedia.co/join. It's the best place for just to stay up to date on all of these announcements, all of the conversations and content we're having. And because, I like to tell you what we're going to tell you, things we're going to be talking about next, the power of your cycle beyond reproduction, the role of visibility as it relates to our periods. Period, you become a woman. Menopause, you become invisible. Why is that? Let's talk. And then because in Kanto, we don't talk about Bruno. No, no. If you're like me, you hear it nonstop. We are doing a summer series around all the things we don't talk about: sex, money, pleasure, health, and Semaine is going to be key to that conversation. So, this is just the beginning, my friends. Thank you for being here today. This was such a fabulous conversation, and I hope that it helped anybody listening feel seen, because we are right there with you, and I love this system and this narrative rewrite. And Kath and Laura, thank you for standing and walking with us and telling these stories.
Katie and Casey, thank you so
Thank you
much
for
for
having
having
us.
us.
This is the Fuck It All podcast, brought to you by It All Media, a home for the news stories that define us and conversations women want to have. We will see you next time on these system rewrite conversations with Semaine Health.